This is attorney Andy Marcantel and attorney Rachel Moss from the Attorneys for Freedom Law Firm coming to you from Knoxville, Tennessee. We're here at Goals and we're having a great time. Got another great guest for you here. We got Mike Sodini, who's going to talk to us all about mental health today in the gun world. How you doing, Mike?
I'm great, man. Thanks for having me here.
Welcome to the show, brother. Why don't you just start by introducing yourself to our listeners?
Okay, so I'm Mike Sodini. I'm a third-generation firearms industry professional. I used to own one of the largest importers in the firearms industry. And in 2018, I decided to sell that and start working on Walk the Talk America, which is a nonprofit organization. It's the first one of its kind, like homegrown from the firearms industry. At our core, we're suicide prevention. But what we really do is look for innovative ways for gun owners to get help when they're in crisis or before they're in crisis, have access to resources to prevent them from doing something horrible with a firearm, right? It's getting ahead of something that could possibly happen. Historically, if you look at guns and mental health, we've always kind of looked at them as mutually exclusive, and they're really not. They go hand in hand. I mean, the majority of firearm deaths are suicide. So we're just saying gun owners should have access and rights to get help.
I think this is so important that there needs to be this conversation, right? Because it's a taboo. This is one of those things that people don't talk about in general, let alone the 2A community. What was it that inspired you to want to create this?
Well, growing up in this industry, I always noticed that the negative outcomes of it were always used against us, and that kind of worked against us getting help, right? Suicide, every year there was always somebody that wasn't there the next year at SHOT Show. It is something I was very cognizant of, but in 2009, the president of my company actually took his life with a firearm. And during that time, I always equate it to movies. I don't know if you're old enough to remember the movie Twister.
Oh yeah.
But
the sequel just came out.
Yeah, the sequel just came out. But talking about suicide was, especially by firearm, was like talking about an F5. We didn't talk about it. So we buried the president of my company, who was a dear friend of mine, and his funeral was like a who's who. And after it was all said and done, we didn't talk about it. Nobody wrote about it. There was no blogs, there was no website, or there's no newspaper articles, magazine articles. And it's just something where I thought, this is an industry that holds our first responders, our combat vets, our active duty military near and dear to our heart. We lose a majority of suicides, a disproportionate amount are those people. And we hold them near and dear. If you go walk around this show, look how many people served, right? And it's just well, why can't we do anything to address suicide? And now we're going to do something about it. And that's really how, what started it. It wasn't the main thing, but, in 2018, I was sitting at a dinner with a complete random stranger, and they were curious about, hey, what's going on with, mass shootings? I said, well, everybody blames the gun industry. We blame mental health, and nothing ever happens. And this person said, well, how do you work with the mental health community, or how do you work on resources for getting gun owners resources on the things you can agree upon? And I was like, I don't think we do. And that's kind of the genesis. That's how it started, and it just snowballed from there.
Yeah, that is a blind spot, right? And when you care about a movement and you care about your Second Amendment rights, you should be wanting to address these types of issues where there are chinks in the armor,
Yeah, there's so many good people in the firearms industry, and we're so good at, we all know guns save lives, right? We believe in that, and we could just take that theory to another level to have resources when you're feeling stressed or, thinking about your mental health. So it can save lives in another way, right? And it's the manufacturers, it's the gun shops, it's literally the firearms instructors, right, that can carry those messages, and we can do it ourselves. We can keep it in-house. And, I just want gun owners to understand that having a mental health plan as a gun owner, or having a suicide prevention plan, is just as common as having a plan for when someone breaks into your house, right? Preparing, training, knowing what to do in a defensive shooting situation, right? These are all things that we prepare for. We should also prepare as gun owners for a time when maybe we're not mentally healthy, or someone in our family's not mentally healthy and we have a gun in the house, right? Have a plan for that as well in the future.
Yeah, just because you're mentally healthy right now doesn't mean, mental health problems rarely just kind of spring into existence, right? They build over time. But just assuming that right now you're in the proper frame of mind to act in your own self-interest, I think a lot of people kind of almost see it as weakness. Right. I don't have any problem. There's nothing wrong with me. How would you respond to somebody with that attitude?
Well, I would just say, hey, listen, obviously right now you're good, or everybody in your family's good, or everybody who's under your household is good, but maybe they won't be one day, and just prepare for that. There's nothing wrong with staying on top of your mental health. That's the whole point. I'm not really trying to catch people when they're in crisis. I want to get upstream to prevent the unpredictable. Right? I think all gun owners, and let's face it, the true threat from a firearm is yourself with the firearm, right? Suicide is the majority of gun violence. When you look at that overall number, 2/3 of it is suicide. So that's something that we can actually impact. That's something we can touch, right? So I just want people to be aware. Once again, I think we've always been conditioned to hear mental health and firearms, and people think like, oh, stop blaming the gun. Well, what if we own it? What if we find the programs? I'll give you an example. One of the things we do is we get firearms manufacturers to put free and anonymous mental health screenings in the boxes of their guns. So you get companies like Ruger, Arms Corps. I just talked to Keltec. Keltec's coming on board. Bursa, High Point. Like all these companies are being proactive about getting mental health resources to their customers. I think it's just a fantastic thing, right? It's just saying, hey, it's here if you need it. Maybe you don't need it. Maybe one day you do need it, but it's here if you need it, and this is where you go. This is where you can go and get that help without having your rights violated, and also keeping it in-house in the firearms industry, an organization that's rooted in the firearms industry.
I've noticed your website has a resource for how to build your own mental health plan. Can you tell me a little bit about what goes into that?
Yeah, so that goes back to the whole, like, when you buy a firearm, and we've all done this, right? We buy a firearm, we go out and we get training. What do they beat in our head is the safety rules, like all the safety rules. We understand all of that. Then the next thing we always hear from is an attorney that says, hey, look, you can't just shoot somebody. Like your life is going to be turned upside down, even if you're 100% in the right. Like even if the person's breaking your house, like you have to know that. So gun owners are knowledgeable about safety, about responsibility, about what happens in a defensive shooting. That plan is just another part of being prepared. Right? So I want to add that part into it. Hey, have you thought about what you're going to do the day that you might be in crisis, or the day you might feel yourself slipping, or the day your son has his heart broken and he comes home but shouldn't have access to that firearm? You need to have a better mental health plan. So that's like what the plan is. It's completely voluntary. Like if someone just, I want you to think about it. And a lot of people say, oh, I never really even thought about that. I never even thought, what am I going to do with my firearms if I end up showing early signs of dementia? Right? I should have a plan with my family, and it includes the whole household or whoever you trust. I just think it's part of responsible gun ownership. You know what I mean?
Excellent point. I mean, this is stuff that happens to everybody. It's not something that comes to mind first. When you said that was the first time I'd ever thought about that kind of even in the equation. Like there should be some sort of a contingency plan for different type of mental health things, some of which might be completely natural, like something like just associated with aging.
Yeah, and I think it's just, once again, it includes people. There's a calming factor to it too. Like, so for example, like there are many households, like gun owners are not this monolithic group. Like we're not all the same. Like different people own different guns for different reasons, right? Sometimes there's household where there's a person who's not even comfortable with their spouse owning that gun. I think having like one of these plans kind of brings the family together. It's like, hey, look, I want this in the house. You may not, but I have a plan for this, and I want you to be part of this plan. And it just puts people at ease. Like, okay, we have a plan for the day that something goes sideways.
Yeah. Something you said was, we've certainly seen it many times, which is that, I mean, it's no secret there is a movement in this country that is very unfriendly to firearms and very unfriendly to the Second Amendment, who are looking for any way that they possibly can to try to strip away our rights piece by piece. And one of the ways that they do that is they take these suicide-related gun deaths and they qualify it all as gun violence. I mean, this seems like a tactic to me to, try to expand the numbers artificially of, redefining what it means to be violent with a gun.
Yeah, it's intellectually dishonest, and they do it all the time. But see, here's the thing. I lean into those numbers. Walk the Talk America has a program for all of those numbers. So we could separate it in different buckets, because that's what it should be, because that's the only way you're going to, honestly attack the issues, right? Like, suicide has a totally different solution than, say, inner city violence. But we got a program for that too. And this is what I love about it. It's the gun industry coming forward to do it. So when I hear those numbers, and I'm speaking at an event that maybe gun ignorant or center left or maybe even a little anti-gun, the expectation level of me is so low I love speaking at those events because once I tell them what the gun industry is doing to combat the gun violence numbers, it's like I know the room's going to stop and listen because they're not expecting it from us. What they're expecting us to do is just walk in a room and be like, Second Amendment, probably from my cold dead hands. Let's not have a nuanced conversation about it. So I kind of enjoy, like, those numbers don't upset me. Those numbers make me lean into it because I can make a case for everything that Walk the Talk America does with those numbers and why this needs to be supported, whether you're pro-gun, gun neutral, or anti-gun.
Yeah, we certainly know a lot of our clients are concerned about mandates under the law. We've actually gotten some mixed feedback for taking the position at our law firm that there could be some reasonable mandates, reasonable legislation surrounding mental health. Certainly what comes to mind first in people's heads is, well, red flag laws. These things are awful. We want to avoid those. We tend to agree with how those are typically enacted. The examples you gave so far have been helping to help the industry give suggestions, resources, voluntary type stuff. Anything that you think could actually reach the threshold of a legal mandate in this area?
Oh, not for me. I'm sorry. I'm one of those purists, right?
I'm with you.
Yeah. I live in a world, and this is very counterintuitive for many people, especially researchers or epidemiologists, and I disagree with people sometimes that are so obsessed with data, like we need the data, and I'm like, don't let data get in the way of saving a life. But, to me, I live in a world where red flag laws get people killed. And that's what I try to make people understand, especially those that are gun ignorant. I'm going to say gun ignorant to give them the benefit of the doubt, right? Because they're like, well, how can a red flag law get people killed? I'm like, if I had $1 for every time I get contacted on a weekly basis from someone who's like, I want to get help, I'm in crisis, but I'm afraid to, or I won't do it because of the red flag law in my state, I wouldn't have to ask for money. I wouldn't have to ask for donations. You know what I mean? So I think that some of these laws or mandates have unintentional consequences that people don't even think about, and they're detrimental to people's well-being and sometimes their life. So
I completely agree with you because I've actually heard people give the advice to others saying that have gone through a traumatic incident, don't go to therapy because that's something that could be used against you later if you want to use a firearm. That's kind of scary to think that therapy could be exactly what they need in that situation, and the only reason that's stopping them from going is their fear that their Second Amendment rights may be taken away from them. So I completely agree with your assessment that red flag laws can really endanger lives, more lives than they could potentially save.
Yeah, I mean, those things aren't recorded, right? Like they're not part of the data. Everyone who loves their red flag law is always going to point to the positive parts of it. This is what we did. It's like, well, you didn't see what you didn't do, and that could have been worse because just like anything, just like most incidents with a firearm, like that are positive in terms of self-defense, like most people don't report that stuff. They're not calling the police and saying someone tried to break into my truck and I showed my firearm, I brandished it, and the person ran away, right? Like it's the same thing. You don't know how detrimental these things can be, but that's one of the things that Walk the Talk America is doing, is we're trying to build a network of pro 2A clinicians. So one of the things we have on our website is a cultural competence course that kind of gives these people that might not have ever thought that there was a lane for them to say like, oh, I can be a pro 2A or a culturally competent mental health clinician and service people that are afraid to go get help, right? So we have that directory on our website, and we're building that out slowly. But one day we want to get there because there's plenty of 2A clinicians. We just got to make them feel like it's okay to come forward in a space where historically has been center left and guns are frowned upon, but if they know that we're uniting as an industry, then that will help them move forward and that will help other gun owners.
Yeah. So the resources that you've talked about so far, as you put it, seem to kind of be before a crisis occurs, trying to help them and give resources before somebody's in that position. We have clients oftentimes who are involved in traumatic events, shootings, things of that nature, where afterwards, while they may have been perfectly mentally healthy before that incident, they're now suffering from trauma. As part of our program, we make resources available. Included in our program is mental health counseling and things like that, which we've had a number of clients take advantage of. Do you have any thoughts on this? Does your organization offer any resources for people who have gone through traumatic events?
We have the resources, and we can always find the resources. So, like, for example, if somebody goes through a traumatic event, we're nationwide. Just because of the nature of what we do, it has to be nationwide, right? Or we're not localized, but we do have clinicians in certain areas. But if we don't have a clinician in there, if someone calls Walk Talk America and they said, I'm going through something and I'm here in Boise, Idaho or something like that, and we don't have somebody there, we find somebody. It's really easy with the network we have to usually find somebody that would cater to a firearms owner who is going to understand, hey, just because you go to the range to mitigate your anxiety and part of your treatment for yourself is to shoot 1,000 rounds, that's not something to be alarmed about, right? Like, you don't have to worry about going in there. So we're not a mental health organization. We just have connections to it and the resources. But we never turn down anybody that calls and says, I need to get help. I need to find a way.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys want to get a conversation going around the issue and offer voluntary, not mandatory resources to people who choose to take advantage of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, get upstream to prevent the unpredictable, and then show the rest of the world, like, hey, the firearms industry is taking the lead on this. I'm trying to get the firearms industry where the alcohol industry got with DUIs. Like, plain and simple. Like, I think we could do it. I think we could be leaders in this space. I think we could use the mental health community as a reference. Like, hey, what do you got that we can use that makes sense? Like, for example, the free and anonymous mental health screenings that I partnered with Mental Health America. That's an engine that they built, they power. But that's something perfectly, it's great for gun owners. But we don't need the mental health community to tell us what to do. We can do it. We have the space. We have the manufacturers, we have the firearms instructors, and we have the gun shops, right? And that's where we can pass the resources and the good information.
Yeah.
Because of some of the distrust with the public with therapy and getting help, do you ever get any pushback from the gun community about what you do?
I used to get pushback in the beginning all the time. Yeah, it's 2018. I was getting hammered, right?
Really?
Like, and if you look at my board of directors, so if you go to the Walk to Talk America website, and you look at my board of directors, and you know something about the firearms industry, you'll know real fast that no one there is going to jeopardize your gun rights. But in the beginning, once it gets that quick trigger that a lot of firearms owners have when they hear guns and mental health, they just automatically assume it's an anti-gun thing and that stop blaming the gun type of thing. But here we are.
I can understand that gut reaction, though, because that's how it's historically been used.
Yeah, like 6 years later, it's gotten so much better. My job is so much easier in terms of, I always tell people all the time, because they're like, you do such a good job of speaking at these anti-gun events, or like, events where it's like gun neutral crowd or maybe a mental health crowd. And I'm like, it's an easier crowd to talk to because this crowd's not on edge. This crowd doesn't like look at this and go, okay, oh, here we go again. Here's another guy up there who's trying to like backdoor us and secretly take our rights. I've armed more Americans than most people in this room. Like, if you look at my history and my family history, right? Like, I am as pro 2A as it comes. But I do understand that there's this level of skepticism when people look at somebody who's preaching mental health and firearms. It's just natural. But we're going to change that. It's a cultural shift. It's going to take time. But we're getting there. I mean, look at the wonderful gun companies like the Rugers and, like I said, the Arms Corps that are getting behind this full blast and saying, like, no, this is a positive thing. We work with the NSSF. We work with the VA. We've worked with the White House. We're the gun industry. Like, I'm proud of that. You know what I mean?
Can you give us more specific examples of changes, activism, specifics you guys have achieved?
One of the things I'm most proud of is our ability to walk into the rooms that historically we were afraid to, right? So, for example, last year I was the very first person for the firearms to be a speaker at the Aspen Institute of Health.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was a really proud moment for me because I was looking around just like I did at the White House in 2019. And
yeah,
I'm like,
but that's surreal.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm the only person from the firearms industry here, and I'm the only person that's coming with these new and innovative ways to get people help. That's what I love. I love it because there's so much negativity out there, especially when you go on social media, and our rights are always under attack, and we always feel like we're wounded ducks. Let's face it. Like, people blame us for things that we had no part of, right? Like, we're just trying to defend ourselves and our Constitution and our families, and it's like, for us to be able to walk into those rooms and just literally change hearts and minds, and I mean that. Like, we don't lose. We don't lose. Like, when we go in there and we explain to them what we do, and it's forward thinking, it's like even the most anti-gun person, even the Bradys, they sit down and they're like, wow, like, I didn't know this was even happening. I didn't know that gun companies were doing this. I'm like, of course you wouldn't. because the only people that know are us. Like we keep it, it's in house right now. I got on the USA Today. We had a full page spread, which I was very proud of, because once again, you consider it like the liberal media. Right. We always say we never get a fair shake. We're getting those. Like we got that.
That's awesome.
Those are these little wins. They don't seem like much. And they're little humble brags, but I really enjoy, when we can surprise people. And it's like, damn, like the gun industry's like doing something about this, and they're doing it well.
These don't sound like little wins to me. I mean, this is a conversation that needs to be had on a national level, so good on you.
Yeah, because I feel like anti-gun individuals often have this idea that we don't care about the suicides or we don't care about the school shootings, but it's really the opposite, that we really care about safety, both from the mental health perspective, but also from the perspective that people need firearms to protect themselves.
Yeah.
Also, we know that the people who don't like firearms so much are going to seize upon these types of events if they continue and are unaddressed and use them to deteriorate our rights to possess a firearm. So what you do is very important in our view, and that's awesome.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Like I said, it's been fun I would have never guessed I would have been here like the day before that this concept came up. If you'd have told me that, you were going to be doing this full time as a career, I'd have told you needed mental health help. Like, you know what I'm saying? But like now I'm here, and it's just been fun to watch. And it's been fun to watch like so many people from the firearms industry, like when it clicks and they get it. And they're like, this is how we get ahead too. Like, this is how we get people off our back. Like I said, like using the old, DUI and alcohol industry, example. But I really feel like this is another way to win. We always got to fight for our Second Amendment rights, and we're always going to need people like that are on there, the pry from my cold dead hands, like no compromise. But we can attack it this way too, right? Like, so we can get it from both angles, like the humanity angle, the corporate social responsibility angle, like the things that the expectation level of us is so low that they don't see it coming. You know what I mean? And when I owned my company, I was a big, don't come to me with a problem guy. Unless you have a solution. It could be a stupid solution, but if you just come to me and point out a problem, I don't need to have you on payroll.
Right.
I can point out problems myself. I can see it, right? And now I feel like that was kind of the expectation level of us. It's like the gun industry, okay, like if you're not going to agree with restriction and these laws, what's the answer? And we'd always go, I don't know, Second Amendment, you figure it out. Now we're like, here's the answer. Boom, boom, boom. Here's what we're doing. Here's what we want to do. You can either help us, do you care about saving lives, or are you virtue signaling? Like, we'll weed you out real fast, you know what I mean? Because once we come with our own solutions, if you don't support those solutions, then I know you don't care about saving lives and you just want to fight. It's exciting to see where it's been, and there's been I've had so much support from day one. I've been in this industry a long time. My first SHOT Show was in '97, so it's been fun to watch it grow.
That's awesome. And I know you were a speaker in a panel in this event. Have you already spoken, or is your panel coming up?
No, actually I'm not speaking at this event. Yeah. Like
I just assumed that you were.
No. That everybody is asking me when I'm speaking, but no, it's this one I just came to enjoy. I feel like I needed to be here because I felt like this is something special.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I always try to support all of the firearms industry events that happen, and especially inaugural ones. So I wanted to be here for it. But it's cool, you know what I mean?
That's awesome.
Well, I think the good news is you are going to be a speaker at our event later this year.
Yes, I am. Yeah, there you go.
So the attorneys...
That's exactly what I was about. You stole my line.
That's a segue into it.
Well, the Attorneys on Retainer Conference is coming up in November, and we're really excited to have you and Walk the Talk America. Can you give us, don't want to give everything away, but maybe a little preview of what's to come?
So we're going to come down there and kind of tell I'm more of the historian of this. I think my story kind of gives people hope, or they see like, oh wow, we can do this. But I'm going down there with Jake Wiskerson, who is when you look at the guns and mental health of Walk Talk America, he is the mental health. He was the very first gun owning mental health clinician that, he always says, I had to come out of the closet as a gun owning clinician and own it, because he's like, we're never going to make change if I don't own it. What is wrong with saying I'm a clinician and I'm a gun owner and guns are normal, right? So we're going to go down there and I'm hoping we're going to wow your audience. You know what I mean? I think we will, but I think we're going to give them a different perspective and a nuance on something that they thought they knew, and now they're going to see it in a totally different light.
Looking forward to seeing that. But now that you've kind of cued me in, and I was thinking the same thing, I'm also going to be watching that audience. I want to see the looks of skepticism on their face as you convince them and show them what you do makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I'm hoping at least some of your people have heard of us,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
That always makes it easier, because usually you have a couple people in the crowd that are like, love what you do, or something like that, you know what I mean? But I'm looking forward to it, and I appreciate you guys extending the offer to come down there and talk.
We're really excited for it, man. Before we wrap up, do you want to plug a website or anything else at all?
Sure. WTTA.org, walkthetalkamerica.org, or any of the social medias. We're on X, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook at WalkTheTalkUS. If you have a question about what we do, feel free to contact us. We're super responsive. And if you look us up, we have 6 years of articles and podcasts and things like that, so you can get a little bit of background of the organization and see what it's all about.
That's awesome. All right, everybody, links down in the description. Go learn a lot more about this. Mike, thank you so much for being on the podcast, man.
Thank
We
you for
appreciate
having
it.
me.
And we're looking forward to seeing you at the AOR convention.
Likewise.
All right, everybody, this has been Attorney Andy Marcantel and Attorney Rachel Moss. If you like this video, make sure to like, subscribe, leave us a comment down below, and share with a friend. Go and check attorneys on retainer.us to learn all about our self-defense program and what it can do for you. Finally, attorneysforfreedom.com to learn all about our law firm and how we represent our clients. Until next time, this has been Attorneys Andy Marcantel, Rachel Moss, and our friend Mike, signing out. Peace.
Peace.